Hi, and welcome to Generation Cult, a podcast about high demand groups and the people who grew up in them. I'm Deanna, and we are wrapping up season 4 with 2 guests today. If you're a regular listener of the show, you probably remember Ashlen, who not only helped me out in season 3 as a co-host, but told her own story about her upbringing in Utah in the conservative Church of Christ. She helps other people now with interventions and recovery from controlling groups through her LLC People Leave Cults. And she's also an executive producer on a film that's currently in development called Beyond the Fence. It's about 4 sisters trying to escape the Appalachian cult that they grew up in. Our other guest today is Lindsey Paulette, who is the writer, director, and producer of the film. I'm happy to have them both with me today. Hi, you guys.
Hi.
Hello. It's so good to be on again. Thanks for having us, Deanna.
Sure. Welcome back. And Lindsey, nice to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So, Lindsey, why don't you tell me a little bit about this film, this kind of basic storyline? And I'm also really interested in how you got involved with this subject matter.
Yeah, so Beyond the Fence is something that I've been working on for a really long time. I started writing it around 16 when I was in high school and I was doing a creative writing class. It wasn't for the class, it was just something that kind of like sparked, I think, from a prompt or something like that. And I'd always had kind of a fascination with like the psychology behind cults and why people joined them and why people choose to start them in the first place. And something that I felt like wasn't explored very much was the people that don't join the cults and they're the ones that are born into it and have to figure out what they want to do, like if they want to stay or if they want to leave and explore a world that is foreign to them because they don't know anything else. To me, that was way more interesting than the story of the people that join them. I feel like we get a lot of documentaries about that. We have a lot of content surrounding that. And so it wasn't really something I wanted to tackle since I didn't have the experience there and I still didn't understand it enough to feel like I could tell a story in that way. Whereas, like, the idea of leaving something that's oppressive, I think, is a little bit easier for people to understand, especially when you didn't have the choice to be there in the first place. So it just felt like a subject that I was more capable of tackling. And then, yeah, I kind of tabled it for a while. I wrote a bunch of other stuff. I graduated high school. I started college and started doing film. And a few years ago, I brought it back out, revised it, and realized that a 16-year-old couldn't write a script. But that I really liked the basis that I'd established for the characters. I mean, the main protagonist is a 16-year-old girl, so a lot of her feelings and things reflected where I was in my life at that time. But then I went in and I revised a lot of the other things, made things cleaner, added plot points, and tabled it again. And then in 2023, I entered it into a screenwriting competition and it won. And that kind of sparked a desire to take it further and see what we could do with it. And that's when I started working with my team. And then we wanted some expertise. And so we got put in touch with Ashlen for some consulting on just, make sure that we weren't telling something that felt inauthentic or exploitative or just inaccurate in any way. And she ended up joining us as an executive producer based on that consultation. So that's kind of where we are.
Great. And at what stage is the film in right now?
So we're still in development. The script is finalized for the most part. I mean, we're always open to shifting some things, but it's pretty much locked and we're just trying to get the funding to actually shoot it.
Okay, well, good luck. So, Ashlyn, let's do a quick refresher for those who don't know you. What kind of work do you do?
Sure. So I am going on my 7th year of working with people who have exited high control groups and relationships. I am a cult intervention specialist with my LLC People Leave Cults. I am very fortunate to have received mentorship from veteran cult intervention specialists in the field, such as Patrick Ryan and Joseph Kelly and Rachel Bernstein, who have been working with families for many, many years who have loved ones in cults who are concerned and don't know what to do. So People Leave Cults, my LLC, we help both survivors who have exited groups and are wondering what's available in terms of resources. Who can I talk to? What the heck is psychoeducation mean? How do I find someone who's informed as a therapist to speak to about my experience? And so I'm happy to offer myself as peer support in that regard and triage survivors to resources. And then the second arm of People Leave Cults is I do an intake and assessment process with families who are concerned and they don't know what to do. And sometimes we get really extreme cases. Usually someone doesn't go to a cult intervention specialist as their first sort of stopgap to figuring out the solution. And so usually our cases are quite complex. And it's my job, if people come through People Leave Cults, to figure out, who do I need to bring in to this specialized team to work with this family? Do I need to include an attorney, a mental health professional, another cult intervention strategist who I can work alongside? And so that's the work that I do. I also have enjoyed doing work with the media. I have been traveling this past year, working with different networks, and I'll be able to talk more about those projects once they're released sometime in 2025, hopefully. But I was in New York and in Denver filming and interviewing as a subject matter expert on different cult and course control related docuseries that's in the media all the time.
That's really interesting. And you sound really busy. What made you want to put time into this particular film? Like, how did you get involved?
So I was approached by the writers and production team, Zoe and Lindsey. I received an email about having me read the script for Beyond the Fence. And would I be willing to do that? Do I have the time? Can I offer feedback? And I was very happy to do that because that isn't an aspect of media involvement that I have yet to be exposed to. And so it was fun for me to learn about the process of reviewing a script, offering feedback, what the development process looks like for this team in order to find funding. All of these concepts were foreign to me, but I love film as a medium. And I remember reviewing the script in my backyard this past summer, and I didn't put it down. I read through the full script, and I really, really wanted to be involved as much as I could on this project because what I felt like Lindsey as a scriptwriter did so well, and what was very impactful to me, was the characters that she had written, these sisters who were born and raised in this really extreme abusive cult, were so illustrative of how people born and raised in cultic environments can react to those environments around them, to the abuse around them. So each character, each sister, has sort of a different reaction to being in a high control group. One of the characters is a little bit more rebellious and wants to push back a little bit. Another one of the characters is, I must stay really good. I must try to be the thing that they want me to be. I need to not fall out of line. And when I reflect on my own story, and maybe this is the same for you, Deanna, because we were both born and raised in a cult, is there were aspects of my cult involvement where I could look back and relate to the sisters. Like at one point, I was that pushback rebellious. At one point, I was that I must conform in order to survive type mentality. And I thought that the script was so well written, and I hadn't yet come across a story focusing on those born or raised that wasn't through like a more documentary style lens.
Yeah.
That I got excited about the film. And female written too, which I loved. And I told them that I was really enthusiastic about the project, and they've been willing to put up with me and bring me along. So
So, Lindsey, why four sisters?
Well, one of them is a baby, so we don't get too much into it. She's kind of the catalyst for everything because it's the injustice of what they're doing to this infant that kind of like sparks the sisters to finally say, that's enough. Like, this is a child. We're not doing this. And I also wanted to capture the dynamic of three siblings because those are the ones that really interact with each other. And I think that that left a lot of room to play with the different dynamics and the different feelings that they all have about their situation. And I definitely put myself into all of my characters, but there's always one that I'm definitely putting more of myself into anytime I write anything. And that's definitely the rebellious one, the 16-year-old Ginny. She's very fiery and, you know, she can be very subdued because that's kind of what she was raised to be, but she's the one that pushes back. She's the middle sister. I'm the middle sister in my family. And she's got this older sister who can be really, really passive about the situation. And like, she's been there the longest, obviously, as the oldest one. And she's got this whole I'm the oldest, so I'm in charge thing going. but then she doesn't make any moves. And so having that pushback from, yes, I'm the younger sibling, but I think I'm doing the right thing, and then them butting heads all the time is just, from a relationship aspect, was really interesting to me. And then you have their younger sister who's just kind of stuck in the middle all the time, which is a character I also see a lot of value in, because I feel like that happens so often in dynamics of three, where there's the two that are constantly fighting, and then no one really thinks about the people that get caught in all of that. And then, yes, I mean, the two younger sisters are just a motivator for these older sisters as well. And I didn't think that I would be able to write something that had as much of like an emotional impact if it was just these two sisters that were not able to get along. So having them be such a large family and relying on each other so heavily, but also fighting with each other all the time, I just felt like was the best way to tell the story.
It also sounds like something that people universally could relate to, not just the growing up in a cult aspect, but the sibling relationship, if not family relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think the relationships between these sisters, and even with the parents, we don't see the parents too much, but we do get glimpses of their lives with them. And I wanted that to kind of be the story. The cult aspects of it are sometimes not even very present. It's kind of like the setting for these relationships, and every once in a while it pokes through the surface and it becomes the point. Everything I write is very character focused, and it's just what I wanted to focus on. And because I don't have all of this knowledge of cults, I have what was available to me in the media. I didn't want to focus too heavily on something and get details wrong or be offensive or anything like that. So what I do know is relationship dynamics, so that's kind of what I chose to focus on.
Mm. Ashlen, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned you don't see a lot of films, like you might see documentaries, but you don't see a
Hmm.
lot of fictional stories about people raised in cults. Yeah, I am trying to think of a few, and there just aren't many.
I remember watching the film The Village for the first time. And I don't remember if I was out of my group by then or if I was still in my group, but I remember for a lot of people who've been in high control settings, The Village was and can be quite an impactful allegory for their experience. And this story certainly has very village esque undertones and themes, I would say. If that's fair to say, you think, Lindsay?
It is. It's one of our comparables, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm recalling another film, The Other Lamb. Have you either of you seen that?
I have not.
No.
It's about a girl born into an all-female cult and she escapes. Sorry, I was trying to recall the name of that film while I was saying that there were not a lot of fictional stories about
Mhm.
people who grew up in cults, and that was one that came to mind.
Oh, it looks recent.
The Other Lamb?
The Other
Oh, I
Lamb.
see it here. Okay.
Yeah, it was really good from what I remember. But anyway, not to take away from yours, I'm really excited
Okay.
about yours. I didn't want to, discredit other films that
No, that's
have
great.
discussed the growing up in a cult factor.
When I think about how film can be used as a medium to help people be reflective of their own experience, right? I think documentaries are really powerful for people who have especially have left groups to watch and say, wow, I can relate to this on some level, even if I wasn't in Nixium. Maybe there are aspects of the vow, for example, that people can watch and be like, wow, I was in an abusive relationship too. And they can apply that to their own situation. And I think having this in a non documentary presentation format, it will allow even a more broader audience to be able to take aspects of the story and apply it to their experiences. And I think, in the case of this film, as we know, not every cult is as extreme as other groups. This story does focus on an extreme setting, an extreme sort of isolation based environment. And I think that that's really interesting because someone like myself who wasn't raised in that sort of setting or with those extremes, I was still able to relate to what the sisters went through and aspects of the story. And I love that. I also thought what Lindsay did such a good job with too was you mentioned the baby and the young one's role in prompting the sisters to take action. And that is something that I actually experienced when I was working with people exiting polygamous communities out west was Oftentimes, it was the children who prompted the mothers and the siblings to leave these groups because of a lack of resources for the innocents. Sometimes we, as people and as stubborn as we can be, we can put up with a lot. But when we see mistreatment or not enough resources for someone underage who can't do anything, that can oftentimes prompt people to leave these environments and seek help and safety. So I felt like that was very authentic to people's experiences in groups.
So, what has your role been in this film? I mean, you're an expert consultant,
Mhm.
but what does that actually
It's a
mean?
great question. So I've never been executive producer in anything really. And something that I have done so far is review the script. I did offer some feedback to Lindsay, minor things. And something that I would like to bring is not only assistance with them in this process, but also I want to look for ways in which we can use this film almost as a medium for psychoeducation, so we can make impacts and inroads with this film within the cult survivor community. For example, breaking down the different sisters as characters, taking some lines from the script, and having a webinar focused on it and inviting people into the story and into discussing how these sisters reacted to environments, how we can relate, and what can it teach us about what we had to do in order to survive. So, using the film as a vehicle for psychoeducation for survivors, I think could be really impactful. And so I'm brainstorming ways to make that happen. I also hope to help be on set as much as I'm able to when they do start filming, to offer support for people who are playing the roles as the sisters and just help ensure that that authenticity is true in my experiences with working with survivors of groups and just being there as mental health support in general.
Okay. Lindsay, as you were putting this together, did you hope for it to be educational in a way, or is that how it developed?
That kind of came with the process. I had never approached a project like that before. Everything I do is in the fictional narrative space, and I don't think until now I had ever written anything that had the kind of potential to do more than be entertaining. I mean, I've written some characters that have been through some things, but nothing this rooted in reality and nothing that affects people the same way that cults do. So it's not something that I was anticipating doing, but I am really glad that it became part of our process. And I mean, we really just started having these conversations over the summer. So it hasn't been too long, but I feel like we've already made a lot of progress in that regard. And I'm excited to continue that into the next year. We can't proceed into filming or really a lot of aspects of the pre-production either until we've got some funding. Right now, it's our small little team and we're all doing it when we can. It's really in between work things that we're able to do this. So right now we're in a weird place where it's like we meet and we send out emails all day and we are just trying to get our outreach really and build an audience. There is a novel version of this script as well that we've been trying to market and help build our audience, but still very much in the development phase.
I had no idea the process of film and development until I was brought on to this project. I can tell that Zoe's really hustling because Zoe lives in LA. Zoe's one of the producers and is out in LA making a lot of connections with different studios and trying to send the script off to people. What's tough and something that I'm finding is just by sort of being on the outskirts of like the fundraising aspects of this is it's hard for young women to get their foot in the door with projects like this who haven't done huge multi-million dollar films. So Lindsay has directed a film before. You know, you have managed a budget, you have that experience, but some of these companies want to know that you can do multi-million dollar type style budgets, and this is a much more like independent based film. And so I think that's one of the bigger challenges is it's getting your foot in the door as like a young female team.
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken or the egg type situation,
Yeah,
seems like to me.
yeah, it's been a struggle for sure. It's something I'm pretty familiar with. I've been making movies for 8 years. All of them were short films up until earlier this year I released my first feature, and we kind of were thinking, "Oh, we finally made this feature film." It was really hard and we did it with like bare minimum budgets and resources, and it turned out way better than we thought it would. And it's very interesting to see that that really hasn't made a difference as far as the pitching process.
Mm, I'm sorry.
The fact that we were able to pull off what we did for such a low budget is actually, biting us in the butt a little bit, because they're saying, "Oh, well, congrats, you made this feature length film, but it wasn't for $1 million. It wasn't for $10 million." In my mind, I would think that if you can pull off a feature film for a few $1,000s, then you give me,
Yeah,
and you'd think that I could do something crazy with that. But yeah, that's just not been the experience. And it's interesting because you see men doing the same thing, where they make these dirt cheap movies and then they're offered millions of dollars to make their next movie, and that just hasn't been my experience. But we're gonna make it work. It's just another hurdle at the end of the day,
yeah.
but it can be a little disheartening at times.
Yeah, that must be really frustrating. Do either of you think the subject matter could have anything to do with it? Because, like, I know some people are really excited about the topic of cults, but I've also found, the opposite has been true. Sometimes people don't want to touch that. Do you think it has anything to do with subject matter, or is it just kind of the Hollywood process?
I'm inclined to think that it's more of the Hollywood process right now, because cults are so hot in the media right now. It kind of seems like, a no-brainer as far as content goes, but we're still recovering from the strikes. Studios are making sequels and sequels and like IP.
That's right.
It's just superhero movie after superhero movie.
Enough with the sequels, please.
Yeah. So no one really wants to give original scripts a chance right now. Go and listen to any podcast around movies, and it's a complaint that everyone's talking about right now.
So, best case scenario, tell me how this would work. I don't have experience in film. So, let's say, hypothetically, you got your funding. What would be the next steps for the film, and where and when would you hope to have it shown?
Yeah, so development is one beast of its own, but then pre-production, shooting, and post-production are also massive beasts. Typically, you'll see a lower budget film shooting anywhere from a month to 3 months, and then there's a hefty pre-production process before that. So ideally, we would partner with a production company that has experience doing a lot of these things, and we would be able to launch pretty much right into pre-production, which is, deciding where the locations are going to be, doing the casting, getting your crew, shot listing, all of that stuff, and then going into the filming, which, like I said, anywhere from a month to 3 months typically for an indie film like that, usually on the lower side. And then post production, which is a beast of a process. My last feature film took us roughly a year, but that was because everyone was volunteering their time and working full-time jobs, so it was like they only had a few hours a day to dedicate to it after they got home from their full-time editing jobs. And then ideally, the production company would handle all of the marketing and the distribution, because that's something that I'm not super strong with. I did it for my last film and we did okay, but it definitely would be nice if there was someone with more experience handling that side of things. So it would probably all together take about a year to get it all done after we got the green light.
Well, that would be nice. I, for one, would like to see some original storylines, and especially about the subject matter we talked about earlier. It hasn't been given a lot of focus. And if someone wants to contact you, anyone has any interest, do you guys have a way to reach out, a website, anything that people can get more information and get in touch?
Yeah, so our website is beyondthefencemovie.com, and then our email address is beyondthefencefeaturefilm@gmail.
Perfect. And there is a concept trailer
Yes.
on the website as well for the film. And it does have some flavors of like some little bits of horror if you're into horror.
I am.
So it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And I am encouraged. I think it's really cool and rare that the production team would involve someone like myself to help ensure that this is told in a way that represents people who leave these groups and who are born into these situations. And so I'm really grateful to be a part of the process.
We are very grateful to have you, Ashlyn.
Well, good luck to both of you. Is there anything else you guys want to chat about?
I would just love for as many people to read the book, just because that's what's available right now. And I think that if people are interested in the story, which is almost identical to the book, that would make things a lot easier for us just because we would have that audience established and we would have these people supporting us and just being enthusiastic about the story.
It's really
Yeah.
nice to have like established lore. And I feel like you've done that through your book release. You can order it through Amazon, Beyond the Fence. And I can send you a link, Deanna, if you want to post it.
Yeah, I'll include all of this in the show notes as
Excellent.
well.
It's an excellent read. I will say, if you have left a cultic group, it can be really difficult to read. And so I don't want anyone to read it to their detriment. I just want to put that out there as a little bit of a content warning that this book and the script certainly doesn't shy away from the themes, patriarchal violence, things that happen that are really awful within these extreme movements. And if you don't have the space for that, that's totally fine. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing us on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yay. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.